Hi everyone, this is Christina Barr and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News, and today we're going to be talking about, you guessed it, this fallout with Afghanistan, and I guess it's not really a fallout because it's going to be something that is going to be ongoing for a long while. Hopefully they can get people out sooner rather than later, but FYI, they are telling American citizens over in Afghanistan that the United States cannot, they're telling them like get to the airports, but they're saying that they cannot guarantee their safety. So obviously that is terrifying. I wish Godspeed to everyone still trying to get out. This is obviously a terrible mess. And of course the president got on TV for a brief amount of time and then went back to Camp David to finish his vacation, to say the buck stops with me, and then blame everyone, blame former President Trump, to blame the military forces in Afghanistan, saying, well, if they can't fight for themselves, why should we have our men over here fighting, slandering them in a way. It's they did lose like 50,000 men over this period of time where they were training. So and then you just like you disabled them basically with the pullout. So he blamed everyone else. Obviously it's a disaster, and he's like, I stand by my decision, and not only do I stand by my decision, I think my decision is actually more right than it was before. So obviously he's a very curious man. Very curious man. But before we hop into it, I want to encourage you to go to blacktnews.com, check out articles that I've written. I talked about this one a lot, but I wrote an article on critical race theory. I think that's really important to share around. And actually, and I explain it that no, they don't teach your kids like every sort of tenet, give vast explanations for it, but they are teaching I guess the big takeaways, I guess, the actual worldview that they're trying to inject within the human population, they do teach it in schools, not only in schools, but it's in our military. As a matter of fact, they should have been doing a little less teaching about white rage and a little more into how to, execute properly leaving a country, and maybe wouldn't be in such a big mess that we are in Afghanistan. But a critical race theory, those are the sort of things that they want to teach in the academy now, and in the government, and in your TV, and so on. So please check out that kind of content that I have on my website, share that around. If you would like to give to blacktnews.com, you can do so on the website at blacktnews.com/donate, or you can also do so by the instructions on the little ticker tape across the screen. And also you can check out different merchandise that I have on the site, like I am not the victim you're looking for. If you're someone that the left tries to put you in the little intersectionality box, that is a great thing to wear and flaunt. I love the You Are Not That Special shirt. Got that in different colors. Got those on mugs. Of course, you can get the Black Tea News mug and stuff with that logo on it. And of course, I got to represent my goat hoodie that I love, and it's in different colors and so on. But I do also want to thank Brighter Michigan Pack. I'm in their studio today. So I thank you for the opportunity to be here. Again, if I say something that triggers you, I don't care. They don't care. It doesn't work like that, but I do appreciate the space and the opportunity to speak before you all. Please make sure that you are liking, subscribing to the channel, putting your email on the website, that you're inviting everyone else to come to watch. And I thank you everyone who's a part of the conversation and who's spreading the conversation, and people who donate, go out their way to help Black Tea News. So first things first, I want to start with a meme to sort of try to lighten the mood, I guess. Violent but mostly peaceful transfer of power. If you remember, that was from the riots of, I think it was maybe the Kenosha ones, but when CNN was, of course, being silly, trying to spin the chaos of like some of the BLM protests where there's literally fire behind them. So that was the chyron that they ran with. So CNN, though their coverage, Jake Tapper's pretty much calling out obviously this is a failure. And I'm gonna play a clip that he had from, I think it was a broadcast from 2 days ago, but I'm gonna play something that he had said, just how he outlined it. But so there is some like mainstream media that is covering like that Biden botched this, and people are using the word botched. So it's bad when the mainstream media is being pretty honest about it. But there were moments, like there was CNN. They had a reporter that was like, "Oh, they're chanting 'Death to America,' but they seem friendly. It's weird." It's like, no, it's not weird. They're not friendly. They just understand like PR, like most people do, and they're not going to kill you on camera unless they feel that that's going to build their PR. But you saying, "Oh, they don't like us," but they're very friendly. You're friendly neighborhood terrorists. Okay, CNN. Okay. So they did have some weird reporting here and there, but mostly people at large believe that this was a botched situation. So Joe Biden, he's an interesting character. Most people have been referring to him as a mindless puppet who's being controlled in all sorts of different ways. There's an interesting piece in the political playbook that I read, and it came out yesterday morning. That is really interesting. That really kind of lays into Biden's mentality and just kind of makes a different case. Like, no, this man is he's not being controlled. He's just stubborn, and he can be dead wrong, but he's just stubborn. He's petty, and he's stubborn, and he doesn't care. He can be dead wrong, but he's actually someone who micromanages, which is interesting since he's getting a lot of nap time in, apparently. I mean, it is weird that he calls lids so early. That is very strange. And a lot of people are saying he has Alzheimer's and things are really wrong with him, and all kinds of hypotheses from people about his medical condition. I didn't really indulge him being unwell until the amount of lids they were having, particularly after Ginsburg died. And I'm like, and they're not coming out and saying like anything. It's bizarre. It's strange. And you can see him declining when he's giving speeches or town halls and talks and stuff. He's obviously not as with it as he used to be. And that comes with age, and it comes for some people sooner than others. The man is not young. As a matter of fact, people make comparisons to what happened here and what happened in Vietnam. Joe Biden was in the Senate when that happened. Like I was over at my parents' house yesterday, and I asked my dad, I said, "Can you recall any presidency that you witnessed that had a more disastrous 7 months to start off?" And he said no. And then he said, and he just seemed really kind of down. And he said, "This reminds me a lot of Vietnam." And I said, Biden was like in office during that time. And he was like, what? Like, people don't realize he's been there that long. He's pretty fresh in the gate at that time. But he's still here. He's still around, which is amazing to me, because it's not like Democrats didn't have a big bench or a young bench or people that they could have ran that would have been far better. And Biden and his team and the people around him, you all may think he's the biggest fool in the world, and he does a lot of foolish things, but he knows he's been around the block and obviously has survived in politics for a very long time. And they somehow convinced everyone to believe that he was the only one that could beat Trump. And I've heard some people say that still, and I'm like, that is not true. Like, everything they did to move heaven and earth to make him be sitting there at the White House, they could have easily did that for other people. Biden had a lot of really messy history. I know he makes a lot of people feel comfortable. Oh, old Joe, reliable Joe. But he had a lot of problematic things that they had to talk through. So it still didn't make a lot of sense. But I mean, but he knew that he could win the campaign just sitting, chilling in his house, just coming up for air every so often, not really having to do much. And but before he got to that point, he was able to convince all the other Democrats that I'm the one who can make the case, who can beat Trump. How? How did he do this? Because every other Republican that I know, like, really talking it through, were just like when we saw Tulsi Gabbard or something, we're like, oh my gosh, that's some trouble on our hands. They really want to run her. And the way she demolished Kamala in the debate, if Tulsi and Trump were like on stage, I don't see him trying to go hard like he tried to go hard with like Hillary and other people. Like, he would have to have a whole different strategy. And I think he'd have to do that with a lot of different people. Him and Biden, though, were just like old men yelling. And one was clearly more tired than the other. But they really went for Biden, despite the fact that there were so many red flags, especially with foreign policy. Do you realize we did not have a debate that really covered foreign policy? We should have had a debate that was centralized on foreign policy. But they didn't want to do that, let's be honest, because that would have been a huge strength for Trump. That would have been a huge strength. So they were like, nah, we'd rather talk about George Floyd and BLM and other stuff like that and how we think Trump is a racist. And in the final debate, it was fair-ish in a lot of parts, I guess, but there were some questions on race that were defined particularly one-sided, because they really decided to go after Trump for what they thought is a record that he deserved, while totally ignoring Biden. And he said racist stuff on the campaign trail. But this is the guy that they selected to be their pick. And he's the guy that they pushed over the finish line. It's bizarre. It's really, really bizarre. Someone said they need to, the Article 25 man, he's unfit to be president. You know what? Jack Posobiec, I think that's how you say his last name. He tweeted out that Kamala mentioned it, according to his buzz with the press poll and stuff. And of course, they're unnamed sources, and you can't always trust that. But he has had some remarkably good insight. So I don't think that it hasn't been discussed. That doesn't mean it's gonna happen, because I think this man is savvier than you think. But this is it. If you see the press really going in hard, continuously going in hard about Afghanistan, maybe that shift will happen. But they take marching orders, sure. If everyone is still going to try to make excuses for Biden, which he kind of laid out in his speech, and he did a misdirect. Like, he knows everyone has a problem with the fallout of how it happened, because most people are like, let's get out of there. Most people are like, it's been a long time, let's get out of there, we don't need a nation build, and so on. He didn't make it about that. He did all this misdirect. He's a fool, don't get me wrong, but he's not a terrible politician. He's been around the block a really long time. And so with interviews, whether it's you're a celebrity doing movies and stuff, or you're a politician, you learn that when you're doing an interview, especially if someone's who's hostile or whatever, you want to make sure that whatever message you want to get across is what's coming across. So every question they may ask, you want to misdirect it sort of in a way to spin and tell the narrative that you want to tell. And Biden, he fumbles a lot and stumbles a lot. And like I said, he's not as sharp as he used to be. But everyone who thinks he's a big, gigantic, he's a fool. But to think he's just a puppet who can't do anything, that's not, I don't think that's accurate. You know, when people are like, oh, Trump's going to come in and destroy him in a debate. I'm like, maybe if Trump is like peak form, like he was with Hillary, especially that was at the second debate. The first one wasn't good. First 15 minutes was like strong, and then he went downhill. But that second one, and I thought the third one was good. The second one was like pure entertainment. Oh my gosh, it was gold. You'd be in jail. Oh, those are brighter times, guys. If Trump was in peak form, sure, maybe. But I remembered he did okay when it was just him and Bernie. He did okay when it was just two of them. So, and Trump made a joke like maybe they'll shoot him in the butt and he'll come out all, But either of them great performance. Let's be real. But he's definitely on a decline. But I don't mean he's all the way at the end yet. So before I get to the political article, I wanted to play just a couple of clips. Like I said, Jake Tapper has been talking about it and being pretty real. And this was from, I think it was maybe the 15th when everything kind of started to go down.
Hello, I'm Jake Tapper in Washington, where the state of our union is watching a tragic foreign policy disaster unfold before our eyes. Weeks before the 20th anniversary of 9/11 and the deadline for President Biden's complete withdrawal of U.S. service members, the Taliban are laying waste to all the gains in that country. Having seized much of Afghanistan, the Taliban are now at the gates of the capital city of Kabul. Their representatives are meeting with leadership inside the Afghan presidential palace. The rapid crumbling of the country has caught the Biden White House flat-footed. On Saturday, after pulling out almost all of the 2,500 service members there when he took office, President Biden said he would deploy more U.S. troops, 5,000 now total, for the limited mission of getting Americans and others fleeing safely out of Kabul, warning of a, quote, swift and strong U.S. response if the Taliban interfere. And with the constant thrum of helicopters overhead, sources tell CNN this morning that a total evacuation of Americans from our embassy in Kabul is well underway and should be completed by Tuesday. That is, of course, a sharp turnaround from 6 weeks ago when President Biden called it highly unlikely that the Taliban would overrun the country, an assessment that even at the time struck many experts in Biden's own administration as unrealistic. And now, as American diplomats rush to shred embassy documents and escape, it seems shocking that President Biden could have been so wrong.
So I had a clip of his actual speech, but it's got a technical difficulty. So just to summarize, he came out there, he said the buck stops with him, but he decided to blame everyone else. He blamed Trump. He said that they had an agreement with the Taliban to be out at a certain time, which this is the most bizarre talking point to me, because there are people who are trying to defend Biden and saying, well, there was Trump's deal. I'm like, what makes you think Biden cares at all about anything that Trump has arranged? Like, I think they both obviously want to get out. And Trump after Biden's speech, he's like, no one cares about the fact that you're getting out. It's just how you did it. How you did it was terrible, incompetent, totally incompetent. How you handled this. Totally incompetent. And so Biden's trying to misdirect, and some people are trying to make an excuse like, well, if Trump was in office, this would happen. No, this wouldn't happen if Trump was in office. And if this did happen while Trump was in office, we could talk about what Trump did while he was in office. But guess what? He's not in office right now. Biden is the one who signed off on it, and Biden is the one who made this mess. And even if you were intending to pull out, why would you pull out in such a manner that would totally screw over the troops on the ground with Afghan troops, which he blamed on them. He's like, we equipped them. We did everything we could. But we can't ask our troops to stay and fight if these men aren't willing to do it, which they've lost tens of thousands of men defending, their country over the years. But they still needed some support. And so even if you feel that way, and there's other people who well, he has a point. We agree with that. Okay, why wouldn't you at least get out our interpreters, people who helped us? Why wouldn't you get out American contractors, their families? Why wouldn't you see if the Christian missionaries were okay? Like, why wouldn't you try to make sure that the American citizens were out before pulling out the troops? Why wouldn't you do that? Or why wouldn't you shred intel? Why wouldn't you do that? Burn everything that the Taliban could take and be used against us one day. Why wouldn't you do that before pulling out? Why wouldn't you pull out in a way that would keep our weapons from going into the hands of the Taliban? And that's what a lot of people I hear is just upsets them the most. All the money that we spent with our taxpayer dollars over there, and now they have Humvees and helicopters and guns. It's obviously a failure. It's obviously a failure. And MSNBC, they tried to say like, oh, Joe Biden, he's taking accountability. This is such a good speech. An analyst was like, I watch a totally different speech.
I hope he gets to own their deaths too. I feel like I watched a different speech than the rest of you guys. I was appalled. There was such a profound, bold-faced lie in that speech. The idea that we planned for every contingency. I have been personally trying to tell this administration since it took office. I've been trying to tell our government for years that this was coming. We sent them plan after plan on how to evacuate these people. Nobody listened to us. They didn't plan for the evacuation of our Afghan wartime allies. They're trying to conduct it now at the 11th hour. The thing that they were most concerned about was the optics of a chaotic evacuation. Well, they got exactly what they were most concerned of by failing to do what was right when we could have done it. We had all the people and equipment in place to be able to save these people months ago, and we did nothing.
Okay, so they didn't listen. People are saying they had bad intelligence. They didn't have bad intelligence. They just lied to the American people because in that was last month, like they're saying your own intelligence is saying that Taliban could take over, and Biden just denied that. Like, no, the troops can totally handle this. We've equipped them. We've done all this stuff. Now, whether they've been trained versus whether they have the will to fight, like, you can determine that a little. The information on the ground should be able to determine that a little bit, Mr. Biden. So, and here's just a little bit of the full plot. RNC like clip this together.
We were clear-eyed going in when we made this decision that it was possible that the Taliban would end up in control of Afghanistan.
But the likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely.
So this was a lie. He knew this wasn't true when they said it. And Bush was the one who started everything. People were pretty much going into the war effort. Like, he campaigned on it. America had a totally different feeling 20 years ago, especially after 9/11. We just totally did. And the mission evolved to the nation building and trying to establish democracy, which isn't a thing that hasn't happened after some American interventionism and stuff. But I'm not making the case that is what we should do. But the mission obviously did evolve, and people got sick of it. And before he was even out of office, that's one of the reasons why people we're ready for a change. And Obama came in hope and change, and he really wanted to get out. But when Obama got in, he realized you can't just pull out people because that would be chaotic. And so Trump campaigned on the same thing, and then he got in and said, you can't, I still want to pull them out, but you can't just pull it out because obviously a vacuum will come, and the cost of what would happen, it would be too high. And unacceptable, I believe, is a term that he used. So Biden knew this, and he was with Obama at the time. He had that intelligence. He knows these things. He just didn't care. So Jen Psaki came back from her vacation today to give a press conference, and so there's people who obviously are still there. They're trying to get American citizens out. People who helped American citizens, interpreters and other people, and the Taliban's going door to door. They're killing people, doing monstrous things to women, from according to information from people who know people on the ground. And obviously it is a terrible situation, and the U.S. cannot guarantee their safety.
But can you offer any guarantee to the Americans and Afghan allies that if they remain there past the end of the month, U.S. troops will help them evacuate past the end of the month?
Leisha, our focus right now is on doing the work at hand and on the task at hand. And that is day by day, getting as many American citizens, as many SIV applicants, as many members of a vulnerable population who are eligible to be evacuated to the airport and out on planes. And we're going to do that in an expeditious fashion. That is the focus of the President, of our Secretary of Defense, of our Secretary of State, and everybody on our national security team. So that is where we will keep our effort.
So she kind of dodged that, like, no, they can't guarantee. And they, like I already said, they put out a statement to people when they request like help to leave. They're just letting you know, you're like, we can't guarantee your safety. And that brings me back to, like, people can say what they want about George W., but he was known as cowboy president. And you know what, my family, we do a lot of missionary stuff, and I had like a kind of when I was young, I had like a totally different assurance. Like, if something happened in another country, that America would move hell or high water. Like, they would come in and they would get us. And so when we went to the Philippines when I was in the 10th grade, we had, the State Department said don't go, and all this kind of warnings and stuff. And we're like, we still feel that we should go for the Lord. And I'll be honest with you, there was a layover in Japan. I was a huge anime freak at the time, so that did play a huge role. I was a child, I was in the 10th grade, so really into anime, and for the Lord too, and the anime. And so we went to the Philippines, but I still had that like assurance. I had assurance in the Lord. I had assurance in my dad and my brother that they protect us too. But I had assurance in the U.S. government that if something happened, that they would make sure that we could get home safely. That was what I believed. That was a confidence that I had. And actually, we did have someone who was a volunteer for the State Department that was following us around with a satellite phone in case we were kidnapped. So it was pretty serious at the time when we went, and there were like some current terrorist attacks that had happened and kidnappings and stuff that had happened. So I'm not just exaggerating the danger. It was dangerous at the time. Was it worth the layover? Well, we didn't stay very long, but at least I can say it was in Japan. But we did great like mission work while we were there, and we were safe. Or we made it home, I guess, alive and without a scratch, I guess, as we can say. When Obama came in, we still went and did like mission stuff. My dad did, but we did not have the same sort of assurance. And so Trump did restore that feeling. But this isn't good. This isn't good that our allies are saying what's the benefit to being an ally of America when they can abandon you when the going gets tough, and they won't be so tough with their enemies. Not as tough as they should be. Jen Psaki was also asked about Gitmo prisoners who are out working with the Taliban now.
Just to follow up on this, obviously getting them through and getting them to the airport is the challenge, as everyone else here has noted. But the administration is left to negotiate with the Taliban, including one of the commandos who was released from Guantanamo Bay as part of the Bo Bergdahl prisoner swap when President Biden was vice president. How does he feel about that? Does he have any regrets, and how's he digesting that?
Well, first I would note that, one, I'd point you to the Department of the intelligence community to assess the identity of the individual. I know there's been reporting on it, but that's not my position to do from here. I would also note that in prior negotiations and commitments made during the Trump administration, there were thousands of individuals who were released. So our focus right now is on, again, not taking the Taliban's word for it. We are assessing, we are closely watching, and we are being very clear about the capacities and the capabilities we have at hand should they be needed. Of course, that's not our objective.
Okay, so translation. I don't really want to answer that, but go blame Trump. Like he did it too. that was the interpretation of that. Joe Biden, he promised that they'd always be straight with the American people. He even said in his speech the other night, Jen Psaki, I mean, how she misdirects, I suppose that's her job. As far as, I guess, what Biden needs, I would say the job should be just to relay the facts honestly to the American people. That's what you would think the press secretary's job should be. But that was also a campaign lie. I mean, they never really intend to be honest with you. And she said some bonkers, bonehead stuff throughout her time as the press secretary. But that was another blame game shift. So Trump did it. Our predecessor did. Well, what about you and what he did when he's vice president in the madness that's going on today? So obviously, that was a bad thing. And you know what? When Trump was releasing them or having making the deals with the Taliban, and they started to do their negotiations, I was on record saying I'm like, why are we doing this? So I'm like, I'm glad I didn't I guess drink the Kool-Aid on that. I almost like this doesn't seem like it's gonna have a good outcome in the end. And then some people pushed back and said, no, I think this is a good thing. We have to end the war. I'm just like, Taliban, that's who we're talking to, though. And someone else was commenting, going back and forth, and said, well, it's been long enough. We need to go home. And I'm just like, didn't they just break the agreement? And that's another thing about people trying to say, well, Trump would have withdrawn or try to blame Trump. The Taliban hasn't been like up and up on their agreements, so I don't foresee that Trump would have pulled the troops because he's adaptable to the information that's on the ground. Biden doesn't care for whatever reason with this ideology. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. He wanted to do it, and then he did it. And the fact, and he's saying, I don't regret it. How can you not regret it pulling like 2,500 troops when you had to send like 5,000 troops back in? It was obviously a mistake. The fact that you can't guarantee people's safeties and you're telling them like to their face or electronically or whatever that you cannot guarantee their safety. How can you say that you didn't make a mistake? The way that you did it, or this timing. I don't think for a second that Biden cares about whatever deals Trump made with the Taliban or any deals he made, period. Trump didn't care about his deals or Obama's deals. And he got out of stuff that he thought was stupid. Was like, we're going to negotiate something better. Biden didn't care about what he said, what Trump said, a prior president said. Biden doesn't even care what he told the American people on the campaign trail. He is the most prolific liar. I know the media doesn't act like it and they try to cover for him, but he's one of the most prolific liars in politics there are. Period. At least in America. Dumb, verifiable lies, but he does it because he knows he can get away with it. It's not because he's just like has Alzheimer's or something and he's just like spouting anything. He can lie because he knows he can get away with it. Period. I'm going to play this clip about former Obama Defense Secretary Robert Gates when he was talking about Biden on the campaign trail. And I thought this should have got more play and something that we should take more consideration to, but people took very little consideration about anything foreign policy. Like I said before, we didn't even have a debate really about it. We should have had a specific foreign policy debate. And I know those aren't as sexy as a lot of the other news of the day that's going on, but considering that the job was the commander-in-chief, it was extraordinarily important, and the debate committee dropped the ball. But why wouldn't they have dropped the ball? They were biased against Trump. They wanted him out. They wanted him out. So I'm going to play this clip from Mr. Gates.
And so on.
I was rereading your memoir before we sat down to talk.
And you said in your memoir, Joe Biden is impossible not to like. Quote, he's a man of integrity, incapable of hiding what he really thinks, and one of those rare people you know you can turn to for help in a personal crisis. Still, I think he's been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security issue over the past 4 decades. Would he be an effective commander-in-chief?
I don't know. I don't know. I think I stand by that statement. He and I agreed on some key issues in the Obama administration. We disagreed significantly on Afghanistan and some other issues. I think that the vice president had some issues with the military, so how he would get along with the senior military and what that relationship would be, I think it would depend on the personalities at the time.
Okay. So, I think that's important information that we should have digested and considered, but that's not something that they wildly considered at the time. So, I want to read to you some things that was in this Politico article. And I was going to do a split screen, but I'm having a little difficulty, so you're going to have to just kind of awkwardly watch me read it to you. So I said that Biden doesn't care, and he's not as crazy as some people think he is. And I sometimes Ben Shapiro and he calls him President Houseplant, and some people call him a puppet and other things. I don't really like President Houseplant because it makes him seem like he's less dangerous than he is. Like he's just a room decoration and all the radicals around him are the ones making the decisions. I don't think that's so. And even if it were true, Biden is the one who decided to put those radicals around him, whatever deals that he thought he needed to make to get to where he is. Like I knew it was going to be a hot mess when I saw some of the people associated with him on the campaign trail. So he's the one who decided to make those rules. I mean, to get those people in with him. And, he's the one who organizes whatever the lies they're going to say and spin. I mean, he's the one who still has to say to them at the end of the day, even if someone else writes the speech, even if the comms team brings it to him. He can't possibly be they are like sheltering him and protecting him. And it is weird that he has so many lids and has so little interaction with the American people. And I'm not saying there's not other things going on, but the perceptions that people have about Joe Biden as if he's just, I know the old puppet fool who got in, and there's like the shadowy folks. I guess there's always deep state shadowy folks, but Biden's been there a long time. He is the deep shadowy folks. So this is from the Political Playbook, and this came out yesterday morning. Understanding Biden in Afghanistan. We have rarely seen a statement from President Joe Biden like the one he released on Saturday. It was almost Trump-like in its lack of diplomatic niceties, its casting blame on his predecessor, and his refusal to give any quarter to critics who say he bungled the withdrawal. This follows comments in July when Biden mocked the idea that the Taliban could take over the country quickly, highly unlikely, he said, and bragged about the Afghan military's superiority. Biden and his team have often been praised for their discipline and refusal to allow what they see as ankle-biting critics in the media to throw them off course. That has often served Biden well, but now we see the flip side of those traits. Last Tuesday at the White House, when Biden was in a celebratory mood after the Senate vote on infrastructure, he took a moment to remind the assembled reporters of all the times the media had proclaimed the bill dead. I know a lot of people, some sitting in the audience here, didn't think this could happen, he said. This bill was declared dead more often than he trailed off and then ended the thought with in any way in the manner he does in recent years when he thinks he'll be accused of going on too long. Later, he admitted that he took time out of one of the most important days of his presidency to review a list of reporters who doubted him. That's why I said earlier he's a little petty. I was just reading about 50 statements from very serious press people about how my whole plan was dead from the beginning, he said. Every biography or deep profile of Biden emphasizes his stubbornness, the chip on his shoulder, his lifelong desire to prove doubters wrong. Whether it was overcoming a stutter or demonstrating his intellectual bona fides or entering political contests, the expert said he couldn't win. He ran for president more times than anyone who ended up making it to the White House. During the 2020 Democratic primaries, he was belittled by the party's top strategists until he proved them all wrong with a come-from-behind victory that included in him and his team a sense of superiority and an appetite for "I told you so" moments. Example, that list of 50 statements that someone in the White House actually took the time to compile and share with the president, who they must have known would appreciate it. This is what the right gets wrong about Biden. Many conservatives see Biden's Afghanistan blunder as evidence of a president who is detached and a plaything of his strongest advisors. Nothing could be further from the truth. In all of our reporting about Biden's presidential style, the evidence is stronger that he's a micromanager, someone who is immersed in the details of the infrastructure bill, who wanted every decision brought into the Oval Office for his approval. On the Afghanistan pullout, he overruled his top military advisors and ignored the near unanimous view of the Washington foreign policy establishment. It wasn't a new position. While Biden championed nation building in Afghanistan in early years of the war, he had turned against it long ago, as George Packer reported in The Atlantic earlier this year. By the time Biden became vice president in 2009, the disastrous war in Iraq, the endemic corruption of the Afghan government, and the return of the Taliban had made him a deep skeptic of the American commitment. He became the Obama administration's strongest voice for getting out of Afghanistan. In 2010, he told Richard Holbrooke, Obama's special representative for Afghanistan and Pakistan, that the U.S. had to leave Afghanistan regardless of the consequences for women or anyone else. According to Holbrooke's diary, when he asked about American obligations to Afghans like the girls in Kabul school, Biden replied with a history lesson from the final U.S. withdrawal from Southeast Asia in 1973. Bleep that. We don't have to worry about that. We did it in Vietnam. Nixon and Kissinger got away with it. So there you have it. We can get away with it. Cares about the consequences. We can get away with it. So that's his attitude. He can tell any lie he wants, spend whatever thing he wants to spend. They can get on TV and undermine the vaccine when Trump is president, and just then when he's president, basically mandate you to take it. Like, I mean, they're pushing whatever mandates they can federally. They're trying to make life uncomfortable for people so they'll get it. But that's the attitude. Like, I don't know, I wouldn't take it necessarily. It's Trump's thing. It's fine for them to undermine it there. But then they got to treat you like you're crazy and killing grandmothers when you don't want to take it. They don't care about the stage they set. You just have to deal with what they say. They don't care about the relationship that Trump had with the troops, and they pushed the bounty story with the Russian bounty stories, even though the Trump White House said there's no credible intel to tell this is real. And when Biden became president, they're like, so this story wasn't true. The CIA says that wasn't a thing, that it's inconclusive. And Jen's like, yeah, that's our intel. Like, well, do you owe Trump an apology? No. They got what they wanted. And what's really sick about it is this man was vice president before all this. So he should have a firm grasp on the importance of the troops having trust in the commander-in-chief, that there be some sort of legitimacy there. But they wanted to win. So it was okay to tear him down. I mean, they've called him a fool, racist, and all kind of stuff throughout the years. But to delegitimize him as a commander-in-chief and his commitment to the troops, when that's like one of the most important things that he is, commander-in-chief, sick. Utterly irresponsible. And he's not the type of person who cares. The kind of lies he told when he first ran for president about participating in the civil rights, about his college records being so high, about him finishing top of his class, just verifiable things that are just wrong, that they quickly were able to get him on. And he had to drop out in disgrace. That didn't stop him. As a matter of fact, he came back bigger and badder than ever. Man, when they started having the Bork, when he tried to get on Supreme Court, Biden invented borking, where before the selection process for the Supreme Court, do you have the credentials? You know? And Biden made it a point no, we have to attack your character. Because if you don't have the certain principles that we think are important, you shouldn't be on the Supreme Court. And Bork's like, it matters what the law says, and we have to interpret the law and how it's written. You know, that's what's important. And Biden made it a whole different game with Bork. And man, what they did to Clarence Thomas. Absolutely shameless. But what does Joe Biden care? The thing that really kills me though is the crime bills and stuff. And I said to people I'm not one of the hard reform on that kind of stuff. I do feel like that's not a victimless crime and stuff. So I'm not as big as other Republicans or Trump supporters, even black Republicans and stuff on it. But the thing that I find really curious about Biden's hard push for it is that obviously he has a son who's a crackhead. And a son who's gone through these issues for a very long time. And I question why he couldn't have empathy for other people. And the answer is he doesn't have to. Because a lot of these people just think they're better than you. You're not owed the respect. You're not owed the truth. They play by different rules. They have different standards. So yeah, they can lock up your kids, but you're not getting theirs. And that's how it is. They'll make all sorts of excuses. Even right now, Biden's gun control. We're going to make sure that we punish these people now with the gun, which I don't even believe that, because they're not big on they're big on prosecuting Trump supporters, but not everybody else. But if you really want to go after gun control, then you're not even going to mention that your son lied on his form to purchase the gun. These people have no credibility. Because they know they don't have to. And why don't they have to? Well, he plays favorites, favors with a lot of big lobbying stuff, big banks, all those folks. Biden's always been in pocket with that. They got whatever deals that his son is doing. Foreign adversaries. So there's that. But the media will always generally cover for these folks. And they did so much covering for Biden, the Hunter Biden story. You could say, well, Hunter wasn't running for president. Don't give me that, because if it was Don Jr., they would have moved heaven and earth with this story. They really would have. With the laptop stuff. This man's lost 3 laptops. How do you do that? How do you do that? Information that should have been known to the American people, they just blocked it. blocked the New York Post, the oldest newspaper in the country, for a true story. And NPR is like, that they acted like that story was so beneath them, and like it's obviously not true. It was totally 100% true. And people with the drive were like, I'm willing to show other people in the media. They're calling out Jake Tapper like, hey, I have the drive. Do you want to see it? You can analyze it, see that it's real. And I don't know behind the scenes if they took them up on the offer, but obviously people didn't talk about it until after the fact, after it wasn't relevant. Do they cover stories here and there? Sure. Like, people are talking about the Afghanistan story. And frankly, they could use the ratings. CNN's been on a huge decline since Trump was out of office. So I'm sure they're actually legitimately horrified of what's going on. But they're news people. They're probably happy that there's news. So they're reporting it. But at the end of the day, they're going to protect their guy. And the media can say they don't have sides. But that's not true. It's obvious they have sides. And some of them have come out and said that Trump was so different. Trump was so different. They couldn't be objective, or they had to act like they were fighting for democracy. Even though Biden was from an administration where they actually went after the media and the press. They were way harsher to people's liberties. Way harsher to people's liberties. I talked yesterday about how Homeland Security is looking at disinformation and conspiracy theories to look out for terrorist threats, possible terrorist threats. What? Because we are against COVID mandates? What? Looking out for violence and calls for violence is one thing, but they said false narratives. They're going to look up like false narrative. Who decides what's a false narrative? Biden lies all the time. He's like the king of false narratives. The media it's his facilitator. So who gets to decide what a false narrative is? Colbert as he covered for Biden after his speech. He's supposed to be a comedian. Now, I don't know why they're against making jokes, but he's like, Biden is right. Why should we have men over there fighting if they don't want to fight for themselves? We're busy trying to protect our own capital and our own civil wars. I'm sorry. January 6th was terrible, but if you're still alleging that was like the Capitol was about to fall, you're just a joke. You're just a joke. You're just a joke. But Biden and them people, they went harder on some of them probably than they did people at Gitmo. So Biden, he is a fool for sure. As Gates said, he's been wrong about every foreign policy decision for decades. And from that Political article, they probably argued about different stuff like Afghanistan. Obama's not a fool. I don't like Obama. And he was a liar, and he has narratives and other stuff that he runs too. A lot of people disliked him as a president, but they personally liked him. I don't like either. Okay? Not a fan. He wouldn't have done that unless there was like some kind of evil and malicious intent or something. Like Obama wouldn't have done what happened, and Trump wouldn't have done what happened. This is on Biden. You can't blame it on anyone else. He's the one who gave the orders, that lied to your face about the intelligence and did what he did. He overruled his advisors, the intelligence on the ground, any sort of common sense, because he just wanted to pull out. Regardless of the aftermath of what could happen to the people there. And apparently he's had this screw them attitude for a very long time. At least according to what I read in the article that was in the diary. And people believe that Biden's empathy is his strongest, feature. The fact that he's gone through such tragedy, like with losing his wife and having to raise up his sons and having one that died. People believe that empathy is his strongest suit. There's a lot of people who can have empathy for the people around them, but not care at all for other folks. So you should really not trust your politicians for empathy. You should trust your politicians, the people who govern you, to want to protect your liberties. That's what they should be doing. And to at least, and as a president, to at least like keep you safe. Like in the grand scheme of things. But he made the case that this sort of terrible fallout is more reason why they should have pulled out. There's very few people. I mean, there's like neocons and stuff saying no, we should have stayed and stuff. And not even necessarily neocons, because he talked about how there's terrorism everywhere. But yeah, but we have a lot of bases in a lot of different places. So I mean, there's 2,500 troops there. You probably still could have left like a small force there. Period. But just the pull out the way that it happened, no, that was obviously awful. And people who want to defend him can blame whoever they want. But he said the buck stops with him. He was lying when he said that. Maybe that's just legitimate, but he obviously put blame everywhere else to signal the media, his friends, Pelosi, the talking points, that the strategy is blame game. But this is pure incompetence. Why? Because obviously create more war. They have weapons. They're going to come in at a stronger force. It could lead to more terrorism. Maybe not tomorrow, but maybe in a few years, sure. This isn't just something that's going to be bad for Afghanistan. There's people we know in Pakistan that are very concerned. It's going to reach out to other nations. And it's going to embolden China and other people as well. When they look at the incompetence of America and someone who isn't fit to lead. And he did what he did because he doesn't care and he thinks he can get away with it, I would say. Why? Is there something more malicious to it? I don't know. Perhaps. Because it doesn't make any sense. But he did what he did. Because that's what he wanted to do. Okay, moving on to just the last two things I wanted to mention. There is a lawsuit going on right now with NBC. Someone who used to be from SNL, Horatio Sands, he was accused in a lawsuit of grooming an underage fan and sexually assaulting her. And so she was 15 at the time and he was 31. I'm reading from an article that's from NBC. And so at the time when he was, I guess they're saying this all happened was like in 2000. And she was 15, he was 31. He was on the show from 1998 to 2006. And he was emailing her from an NBC email, but apparently so was Jimmy Fallon. And so the article doesn't go on to say what the emails were talking about. But then he started grooming her afterwards. So I don't know. They're just referring to the woman as Jane Doe right now in the article, not revealing her name. But she was a super fan at the time, and he did get handsy and flirtatious and physical with her. And of course, he's denying it right now. And we'll have to see where that goes. But I guess I'm mostly interested what's going to happen with Jimmy Fallon, if Jimmy Fallon is going to be pulled into this lawsuit as well. In May 2002, Sands allegedly gave the girl, then 17, a ride in a limousine. The lawsuit says she attended 2 SNL parties, and Sands allegedly acted inappropriately by kissing her, groping her breast, groping her buttocks, and digitally penetrating her genitals without her consent. So there's some pretty gross stuff in here. So he's denying it. And they did reach out to Jimmy Fallon for his comments on it, and of course they remain silent. And I wonder how silent they can be. Obviously, has a big show with a big network, part of a big company, and I think that they'd want to mostly try to keep that story under wraps as they can. We will see if that becomes more of a thing. And if he has to give a comment on that. A side note, Jimmy Fallon, on his show the other day, he was talking about the results of the census and was talking about how white people are declining, like the numbers of white people in America, and his audience cheered. He kind of looked like, what the heck? What is wrong with these self-loathing white people? I don't understand. Like, why do you hate yourself? I don't understand. I don't get it. Why have you let someone convince you to hate yourself so much? It's a sad life. And the last thing I want to mention, some other right wing people have talked about this before, but there was a group that has decided that we should start saying chest feeding instead of breastfeeding. Which obviously is bizarre. And my sister had just called me before I came in here in the studio, and she told me how she was blocked by a trans person, and they have they were talking about a TV show, maybe 90 Day Fiance, and someone had a guy had fingernail polish on, and so people were discussing about the fingernail polish. And so the trans person in the comments said, well, I don't think anything should have a gender. We shouldn't assign genders to these things. And so my sister said, they started going back and forth, and pregnancy came up. And so the trans person said, well, if my son wants to have a child, then he can. And then my sister's like, if your biological daughter wants to have a child, this is biology. Like, you can't identify into that. Why are we arguing? You say gender is different than sex, but then you want to argue about things that are 100% biological, like pregnancy. It doesn't make any sort of sense. And so they got really, really offended with that. And my sister has kids. She knows how it goes. It's really biological. And so they went back and forth for a while. And so my sister said, I used to work in retail, and I had to service a lot of people who were trans. And so if a man who believed they're a woman came into the store, they shopped in specific female aisles and stuff. There wasn't like non-gendered stuff. They go to the women's section. So on one hand, they have the attitude that things shouldn't have a gender, but then there's obviously they want things that are gendered and specifically female gendered because that's how they identify with. And so my sister just pointed out the inconsistencies with that. And so she told me that she got blocked for pointing that out. And she's not one to really argue a lot of stuff with like politics and stuff, but she does call me on occasion when she's got something juicy or she has a question or something. But the Academy of Breastfeeding Medicine is suggesting that we say chest feeding and father's milk in new guidelines. So they got a couple doctors together who are obviously insane to sign off on this. Obviously it is crazy because, like I said, you can identify whatever way you want to identify, and no one is obligated to identify or acknowledge how you identify, FYI. But men don't like to hate like that. Like, you have to have the baby to start producing this stuff. When a woman is born, like she's born with, with the capability to do those things, and barring there's some kind of defect or condition or something, she can naturally produce children, and that is not something that men can identify with. If you really want to identify, and that's how you in your mind, how you perceive yourself, that is one thing, but you cannot you cannot identify into having a baby, into being a mother, into lactating. Those are very specific biological things. So I've written about this before on my site. I've written about this before, and I'll say it again and again. Sex and gender are obviously intertwined. And even in the definitions they have when they get from WHO and stuff, it acknowledges that they're intertwined. But they don't want to acknowledge how intertwined they are. But it is obviously intertwined. And the people who try to convince you that it is not, they will eventually slip up and let it be known that they actually do think that they are intertwined, because they are so pressed about trying to be able to participate in things that are 100% biological. You cannot identify your way into having a period, and just because you decide that you identify as a man doesn't mean that men can have periods. That's not how it works. And just because you believe that you are a man does not mean that you can breastfeed. It does not mean that you can have a baby. You are a woman. It is biological, and why don't you just keep trying to just keep them separated if you feel they are separate, instead of trying to mix the whole entire world and try to play this huge gender confusion game and say that you can be a man who can have a baby, or you're a man who can chest feed. And sometimes it gets even more perverse than that. There was, I don't remember where this is from, but everyone was like talking about it on some kind of TV show where they were showing a couple, and I think the biological man became a woman and the woman became a man or whatever, and the obvious biological the man was trying to breastfeed a baby, had the baby to his chest. He can't lactate. Like, he had nothing to give, but they just like had the baby trying to latch onto his milkless nipple. So obviously something is wrong there. But they want you to just keep pretending like it's all peachy keen and just so normal. And it's harmless. It's harmless holding a child to your milkless nipple, trying to latch on. Why are you wasting that baby's time, you sicko? Deranged. It's deranged. Totally deranged. So anyway, that is the show for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. That political article is really interesting. I did tweet it out. I will put it on my Facebook page as well. Please check out blacktnews.com to check out different content that I have on the site. Again, I think the critical race theory article is really good. You should share that. And I'm going to be coming out with some more stuff because they totally did out themselves that basically proved my article correct. So, and I'm talking about like Kimberly Crenshaw, who was like one of the people who invented it. So I feel very, very justified and timely. It's very timely. But if you also enjoy what I do, you enjoyed this broadcast, and you want to help Black Teen News, you can donate. You can do that via like the instructions that have been scrolling across the bottom of this the whole entire time, or you can go to blackteennews.com/donate, and you can do it on the website. You can also consider purchasing some of the products that I have on there. I love this hoodie. It's so comfortable. You can also get a t-shirt because obviously it's warm outside right now. It's still summer, heading into fall, but so you should totally get it because we're heading into fall. You know, you get clothes like earlier in the seasons and when they actually start, popping up. But anyway, I do have that in different colors. Got this Denies White Supremacy Defeat Joe Biden shirt. Of course, I showed you this earlier. I'm not the victim you're looking for. You should get this because we totally missed Trump. I voted for Trump, and all I got was historic peace deals, border security, ISIS destroyed, energy independence, USMCA, and so on, and ends with this lousy t-shirt. It does mention gas prices under $2. Man, who doesn't miss that right now? Who doesn't miss that? You got this Be Better Not Bitter shirt. I love that. You also got stuff with Black Teen News, the logo. You are not that special. You should really get that. Trigger someone in your life, or you can get this cute little adorable little cup that says you are not that special. But consider getting some of that merchandise. All of it helps Black Teen News. Make sure you're following me on YouTube, and that you are not only subscribed, but you are hitting the notification bell so you know when I go live, and make sure that you are liking the Facebook page, that you are sharing the content on my social media platforms, on TikTok, on YouTube and Facebook. My handles are at Black Tea News, and on Twitter it is at True Black Tea. So thank you guys for watching today, and I will see you tomorrow.